So my name's Steph. I am the ASC advisory teacher for Knowsley. I will cover a lot of ground today, so I'm quite eager to get started because, like Charlotte said, we're covering quite a few different areas. So yeah, I might have to bear with my voice though, because today's the day I've obviously got a sore throat. So there we go. So hopefully, Charlotte
Okay,
or Leslie, can you
we
show?
can see
Yeah,
that.
you can. That's fine.
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. So I'm just going to move my Teams thing over there. So like I said, my name's Steph. I'm the ASC advisory teacher for Knowsley, and the three areas we're going to be looking at today are understanding sensory seeking and avoiding, children learning self-regulation, and the PDA profile. So we'll start off with understanding sensory seeking and avoiding. So our senses are the key to how we understand and move through the world around us. Each sense has an important job, sending information to our brain to help us react and interact with what's happening. This helps surroundings and move smoothly and safely. As you can see from the pyramid of learning, our sensory motor development, our perceptual motor development, and our cognitive intellect all rely on our sensory systems working well. Just going to stop share in a minute because, oh, here we go, share sound. I didn't press share sound, so hopefully you'll hear this.
We have 8 senses. 5 you have probably heard of: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. And 3 that you may not be familiar with. The vestibular sense, sometimes known as the gravity or balance sense, allows us to move smoothly. It helps us with balance while we walk and run, and to stay upright when we sit and stand. Proprioception is the sense of self-movement, force, and body position. It is present in every muscle movement you have. Without proprioception, you wouldn't be able to move without thinking about your next step. Interoception helps you understand and feel what's going on inside your body. For example, when you're hungry, thirsty, in pain, or need to toilet. Imagine for each of our 8 senses, we have a cup. And for us to feel regulated, each cup needs to be full. Each time we get some sensory input for one of our senses, it fills up the cup a little. For each sense, some of us have big cups, and some of us have small cups. Imagine you have a small cup for sound. It fills up quickly with a little noise, and any more can feel overwhelming. Imagine you have a big cup for proprioception. You will need lots of movement to feel regulated. Understanding someone's sensory profile is really important in order to know what they need to feel, learn, and perform at their best.
So being hypersensitive or hyposensitive to sensory input refers to how someone's nervous system processes that information. These terms are often used to describe sensory sensitivities in conditions such as sensory processing disorder, autism, or ADHD. Hypersensitive means overly sensitive to sensory input. In the video, this was described as having a small cup. So sensory experiences can feel overwhelming or even painful. So for example, bright lights can seem blinding and loud sounds can become unbearable. Someone who is hypersensitive might avoid situations or stimuli that they find overwhelming. So for instance, they'll avoid crowded spaces, loud environments, or certain foods. Hyposensitive means undersensitive to sensory input or having a larger cup. The brain doesn't register sensory input strongly enough, so a person might seek out extra stimulation. So, for example, you may not notice pain or extreme temperatures, and they may crave strong sensory experiences such as tight hugs, spinning, or loud noises. Someone who is hyposensitive might seek out more intense sensations in order to feel balanced, such as jumping, banging on objects, or eating very spicy foods. You can see both seeking and avoiding behaviours in a person depending on the environment and the type of stimuli. So, for example, someone may dislike light touch and avoid this as it can feel overwhelming and uncomfortable, but they may seek out firm hugs as they don't register deep pressure as strongly. So they touched on proprioception in the video, but I'm just going to give you a quick overview for each one before I go into the seeking and avoiding behaviours. So proprioception is the body's ability to sense its position, movement, and balance without needing to look. So some examples you might see in the classroom might look like children leaning heavily on their desk. You may see rocking in their chair, pushing against walls and furniture. They may seek opportunities to stretch or stand up. They may stand too close to people or seem to have a poor awareness of personal space. They may bump into objects or people. They may seem clumsy or awkward in movement. You might find that they come across as heavy-handed or footed, and you may find that they like to chew objects such as clothing and fingers and what's going on around them. Your avoiders will look like they avoid touch from other people. They might avoid active movement or exercise, sometimes appearing lethargic or even lazy. They may seem uncoordinated, have difficulty using stairs or can struggle with balance. They may have difficulties with fine motor skills and manipulating small objects, for instance, doing up buttons or tying shoelaces. You might find that they have difficulty catching, and they move the whole body to look at something. The vestibular system helps us to keep our balance and to know where our body is in the space around us. It tells us when we're moving or when our head changes position. Your vestibular seekers in the classroom might do things like seek all kinds of movement, and this can interfere with daily routines. They may appear restless when seated for long periods. You may find that they tip their chair back frequently. They may bump into people or objects. They may tilt the head back or hold the head in an odd posture or position. They might enjoy being upside down. They might display a need for rocking, swinging, spinning, or jumping. They may headbang, and they might seek rough and tumble playful interactions. Children who avoid vestibular input will look like they fear heights and avoid using playground equipment such as slides, firemen's poles, and climbing frames. They will avoid running, jumping, or fast-paced activities in PE or break times. They might sit very still or keep both feet planted on the floor, seeming quite tense to avoid any sensation of losing balance. They might become anxious or irritated if they're bumped or brushed against. They might show reluctance to walk on uneven surfaces such as gravel or grass because it can feel less predictable. They may stay close to walls or walk cautiously in wide open areas. You might find they're hesitant or show visible discomfort when going up or down stairs. And there might be a frequent request or give reasons to sit out of PE. So the tactile system is responsible for our sense of touch. It allows us to explore and interact with the world by having the information processing through the skin. Your tactile seekers will show behaviours such as frequently touching their desk, classmates' belongings, or objects around the room. They might play with small items on their desk. They may like to chew pencils, their clothes, their hands. They may seek physical contact with others and like to give hugs or rub their hands along someone's arm. They may constantly adjust, rub, or feel the textures of their clothes, tags, or even others' clothing. They may press their body against objects like desks, walls, or the floor. They might pull at their hair, scratch at their skin, or tap their fingers. They may reach out to touch walls, door frames, or even the floor while moving around the classroom or in corridors. And they may seek tactile input through tasting or licking things such as pencils or fingers. Your tactile avoiders will show behaviours such as shying away from being touched, refusing hugs, pulling away. They may avoid touching materials like rough paper, certain fabrics, sticky surfaces, or may visibly show discomfort when they encounter these textures. Our younger children as well may look like they avoid messy play or be quite distressed during messy play. They may flinch or become agitated when touched lightly or unexpectedly. They may refuse to wear clothes that feel uncomfortable, such as tags, seams, or fabrics that can irritate the skin. They may avoid sitting close to others, refusing to participate in group activities where physical proximity might be common, so think PE or drama, and there might be a reluctance to use the hands for tasks. The visual system is what helps us see and interpret the world around us by detecting light, colour, and movement. Children who are seeking visual input might display behaviours such as focusing on shadows, reflections, or spinning objects. They might seem to have a poor depth perception, so you might encounter problems with throwing and catching. They might seem to be attracted to lights. They look intensely at objects and people, have a tendency to use peripheral vision, so looking at things out of the side of their eye. You might see repetitive blinking and head bobbing, and moving fingers or objects in front of the eyes. Rulers and pens are frequent objects that I see when I do observations. Your visual avoiders will look to be quite frustrated or tired under fluorescent lighting. They might be bothered by bright lights after others have adapted, appear sensitive to changes in lighting. You might notice that they look down most of the time, or that they prefer to wear a hat or their hood up to sort of thin down that visual field. They will watch people when they move around the room, and they might notice tiny changes in the environment. And this is because they're quite vigilant to the visual environment around them. The auditory system helps us hear sounds and understand what they mean. It allows us to detect the direction and distance of sounds. In the classroom, the seeking behaviours you might see are not responding to your name being called, being unable to distinguish between some sounds, the enjoyment of crowded, noisy spaces, enjoying the sense of vibration, being fascinated with certain sounds, appearing not to hear or seem to have possible problems in hearing, but it's important to get hearing problems ruled out in the first instance before we think of auditory seeking behaviours. They may hum, tap, or make other noises, either with the voice or objects, to provide that auditory input. They may speak to themselves or repeat phrases even when it's not necessary. Gravitate towards areas of the classroom where there's more noise, such as near a door, a window, or a group of children talking. And they may respond loudly or show excitement in ways that involve their voice. Your auditory avoiders may show behaviours such as covering their ears with their hands or pressing their hands against their head to block out the noise, seeming to become agitated, frown or wince when there's background noise or loud sounds like classroom chatter. You may notice that these children say to you that the atmosphere is quite loud, that the classroom's quite noisy, even when it can be quite low level. They may avoid participating in group activities or sitting near others to escape the noise. They may avoid speaking or seem hesitant to participate because of the noise levels. And you might find they withdraw, zone out, become unresponsive during activities, even leaving the classroom or having the wish to work outside or alone. The olfactory system helps us smell things by picking up scents in the air. It also helps us enjoy food and can trigger memories based on what we smell, because this is very closely connected to the limbic system. Seekers might display behaviours such as sniffing items around them, being drawn to areas with strong odours such as the bin or the dinner hall. They may lick objects such as their hands, pencils, or books to explore the sense of smell. They may bring scented objects from home, such as scented lotions, markers, or perfumes, or be wearing these in school. They may frequently sniff their clothing, hands, or fingers. They may draw attention to the scent when they smell it, and this seems to bring a sense of joy. They might be particularly drawn to art supplies such as scented markers, glue, or Play-Doh. And they might take breaths and deep inhalations to focus on or indulge in the scent of something in the environment. And just a quick note that your seekers may not always seek the nice, safe smells either. So just something to think about is the fact that smearing or playing with feces can sometimes indicate an olfactory seeking behaviour, alongside your tactile and your proprioceptive seeking as well. Your children who show avoiding behaviours will do things such as cover their nose. They will avoid sitting near the sources of strong odours. They may show visible signs of distress, such as gagging, coughing, or making faces. They may try to physically move away from the source of the scent or ask to leave the room to escape the odour. They may become visibly anxious, fidgety, or squirming in their seat as they try to avoid the smell. They may refuse to eat food if the smell of their own or others' food is too strong or unpleasant, and they may complain about smells. The gustatory system helps us taste different flavours such as sweet, salty, sour, or bitter. So some examples you might find in school are children who lick their pencils, fingers, or other classroom materials to experience the different tastes. They might put non-food objects in their mouth. They may ask for snacks frequently, often wanting to taste or chew on food. They may chew on items such as pens, pencils, or even clothing. They may drink large amounts of liquid throughout the day, especially if that drink is flavoured, and they might be keen to explore different flavours. Your avoiders will do things such as refusing to eat certain foods, or may avoid specific textures or flavours they find unpleasant. They may gag, make a face, or become visibly upset. You might find they spit out food that they don't like or find overwhelming. They may avoid eating during snack or lunchtime altogether if they are sensitive to certain tastes. They'll resist participating in activities that involve tasting or exploring food, such as cookery lessons or science experiments relating to food, and they may cover the mouth or nose around food. Anecdotally, I see a lot more avoiding behaviours from children, especially with autism, than I do seekers. And interoception is the sense that helps us feel what's going on inside our bodies, such as when we're hungry, thirsty, or tired. Some things that you might see in the classroom environment for your seekers include frequently asking for food or water, even when it's not a meal time. They may ask to use the toilet often, not necessarily because they need to go, but more for the sensory feedback. They may engage in repetitive movements. They may talk about feeling too hot, too cold, or too tired, even when the classroom environment hasn't changed. They may overreact to hunger or tiredness by becoming easily frustrated or upset. And they may have difficulty staying still and will frequently adjust their position in their seat. And your avoiders, it's less avoiding, but more not realising what those signals mean. But for the sake of continuity, we'll say avoiding. So children may not ask for food or drink even when it's needed. They're not getting those signals. They're not realising that that's what that signal is. They may ignore the need to use the toilet or avoid going even if they're uncomfortable, possibly due to not recognising the internal sensation. They may shut down or withdraw even when feeling internal discomfort, showing little awareness of what their body needs. They may not be able to express when they're feeling too hot, too cold, tired, or hungry, or this may come out in acts of behaviour as they try to communicate what their body needs. They may focus excessively on external activities because it's more focused on what's going outside of them rather than inside of them. And becoming disengaged or appearing tired, but not able to ask for rest or a break because they're not recognising those signals that they need to rest or recharge. So some of you may have seen this video before, but it's always worth reminding ourselves what it can feel like for someone who experiences sensory overwhelm. So this is Alex, and this is his experience of a shopping centre. Nope.
One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Take my hand.
No, Alex. No, it's fine, isn't it? It's fine. I'm not naughty. I'm autistic. And I just get too much information.
So what can we do to support those with sensory issues in the classroom? So we can create a sensory-friendly environment. We can adjust the lighting, the noise, and the layout. We can use clear communication. We can simplify language and add visuals to support understanding. We can teach coping strategies. We can introduce deep breathing, counting, focusing on a calm object, for example. We can provide sensory equipment, so offer fidget toys, ear defenders, and textured materials, whatever is unique to that child's sensory needs. We can offer sensory breaks, including regular breaks for stretching, walking, or using sensory tools. We can respect sensory differences, be mindful of textures and sounds, and work with parents to find out that child's sensory profile. Offer choices and flexibility. Let children choose their seating and activities based on their sensory preferences. We can promote self-awareness by helping children recognise and communicate their sensory needs. And we can be mindful of transitions and allow time and provide countdowns between activities. So, children learning self-regulation. Self-regulatory skills can be defined as the ability of children to manage their own behaviour and aspects of their learning. In the classroom, being able to self-regulate can help children stay calm and focused, reduce stress, and help them learn more effectively. Supporting children to self-regulate means they're more able to stay on task, work through challenges, and communicate better with their peers and teachers. So when we think of self-regulation, we often think of emotions, and this is certainly part of it, but it can be closely linked with how well our executive function skills are developed. The Education Endowment Foundation evidence from the early years states that self-regulation and executive function are closely interrelated. They are typically applied together to help children gain greater control over their thoughts, actions, and emotional responses. Children's ability to apply these skills can be influenced by their early experiences, their current state of well-being, including their emotional state, and levels of motivation. Supporting the development of these skills may mean children are more likely to do better later in school. Executive function are the skills that help us manage our learning, working, and daily activities. We've all got executive function to varying degrees. Difficulties with executive function are associated with multiple neurodevelopmental conditions, including ADHD and autism, and this is because of the differences in the way that the brain is developed. Examples of difficulties include paying attention, organising, planning and prioritising, starting tasks and staying focused on them to completion, regulating emotions, and self-monitoring, so being able to keep track of what you're doing. I wanted to highlight in this training that not only does self-regulation look different between our neurodivergent and our neurotypical children, but that it can look different within the same gender. A neurodivergent girl and a neurotypical girl will have very different experiences of school. However, they may look virtually the same in their presentation until they get home. You've just got to ask parents if that's the case. So girls and women are underdiagnosed compared to boys and men. So why is this? Some of it can be down to masking and camouflaging. So girls often hide or mimic social behaviours, making their autism or ADHD symptoms less obvious. Internalized hyperactivity. So girls may show subtle signs such as fidgeting, excessive talking, or mental restlessness rather than the overt physical hyperactivity. Social expectations. Society expects girls to be more socially adept and compliant, leading them to suppress or hide their struggles. Diagnostic criteria bias. ADHD and autism diagnostic criteria have historically been based on boys' symptoms, and this makes it harder to identify these conditions in girls. Girls are often diagnosed later in life, typically during adolescence or adulthood, due to the subtler presentation of their symptoms and co-occurring conditions. Girls can often experience anxiety or depression alongside autism or ADHD, which can overshadow their neurodevelopmental symptoms. So this is a short clip of Paddy and Christine McGuinness talking about masking with the two specialists who first told them about their children's autism.
We have a lot of children who present very subtly, and particularly girls who are so good at masking.
What is masking?
So masking is where a child learns certain behaviours in order to get by, to hide the anxiety they're feeling behind
And to
it.
fit in.
And to fit in, right. Absolutely. And it does happen with boys too, but they're less frequently. I think boys are often more obvious to the
They
teachers.
can be more physical and hide everything.
Things, yeah. Girls, it's fitting in. They've got to fit in.
Will they be masking just at school, or will they try it with the parents as well?
It depends on how comfortable they are in a setting.
If you're masking it, then surely you must be lower down on that scale, because you're not going to be able to mask. Because Leo and Penelope won't be able to mask.
No, Penelope does mask. Of course she does.
Oh.
Of course she does.
Go on then, give me an example.
Everything in Penelope's behaviour is mimicked, and it's learnt behaviour and copied, and it's like if she...
Yeah, but that's not masking, is it?
Do you think any of Penelope's conversation is an actual conversation?
Well, yeah, when she talks to me, I understand, you know, it might be a little bit kind of, it might not flow as well, but she'll come up to me and, you know, whatever. Can I have some biscuits? Can I do this? Can you do that?
There's functional language though as well, isn't there? There's can I have a biscuit? Can I have a whatever? Yeah. And then there's also the I really want to connect with you language.
Right.
And it's those things that they find really difficult.
Yeah, she doesn't do that at all.
Yeah, so she may use more functional or familiar language in order to be able to do the things that she thinks she should be doing, but not really understand the connection. I think it's really important that we think about masking. I'm just thinking about some of the children at school, that when they're in a school situation, the problem with masking is that they may have learnt all these wonderful ways of getting by, but their anxiety
It's exhausting.
is absolutely through the roof, and it gets worse as the day goes on. If you get enough events in the day when they've been anxious and they're masking it, that's when you get the bottle of pop.
I can see why at home they'll probably have more meltdowns and upset and everything else, because that's where they probably feel they can be themselves and just go,
Exactly.
Thank God I don't have to pretend.
Yeah.
Here.
Oh, God.
I can see that Leo presents differently to our two girls. Leo's autism is much more obvious than Penelope's and Felicity's. Talking to Kirsten and Lisa has made me realise how much there is to learn.
So girls may be more able to mask their executive function difficulties while in school, but this can normally just mean more dysregulation at home. So here are some general behaviours on the table on the slide that you can look for in order to better support the more subtle presentation of executive dysfunction challenges that you might see in girls. Now, despite seeming very different in the different columns, sadly, they share many negative characteristics if they're not supported. So, for instance, difficulty recognizing, processing, or managing emotions can result in strong reactions such as meltdowns, shutdowns, or outbursts. Both groups are prone to anxiety, which can increase challenges in regulating emotions and behavior, often stemming from a fear of failure or social pressures. Perfectionism, a strong desire to meet high expectations, which can lead to overworking or avoiding tasks altogether, which increases stress and self-doubt. Burnout and fatigue, the effort required to mask struggles, stay organised, and regulate emotions often leads to mental and physical exhaustion. And as we heard in last week's presentation about the window of tolerance, both groups can experience low tolerance for frustration when faced with challenges, leading to task avoidance and emotional outbursts. Repeated struggles with executive function and self-regulation can lead to feelings of inadequacy, self-criticism, or low self-esteem. And that's for your neurodivergent children and your neurotypical children, regardless of gender. So what can we do to support? The mental health team last week gave some excellent examples of how to support emotional regulation and to promote well-being. So instead of going over all that again, I'm going to focus on how else we can support self-regulation and executive function within our classrooms. So the first thing we can do is to create a predictable and structured environment. Predictability provides a sense of safety and control, reduces anxiety and emotional overwhelm. Neurodivergent children often struggle with uncertainty or unexpected changes, which in itself can lead to dysregulation. So how can we do this? We can establish clear routines that children can refer to throughout the day. We can use visual timetables, now and next, and checklists to help children anticipate transitions and tasks. We can prepare children for any changes in routine in advance. And we can create calm zones or designated areas in the classroom where children can retreat to when they feel overwhelmed. We can help them by teaching emotional awareness and self-regulation strategies. So students who struggle with emotional regulation may not always recognise when they are becoming dysregulated. Think back to the sensory section and the part where we discussed interoception. Some neurodivergent children may not know that the sensations they're experiencing are emotions and may need support to make that mind-body connection. We can support this by using emotion charts or visual aids that can help students identify and label their feelings. We can teach self-regulation techniques such as deep breathing, counting, or using calming sensory tools. The mental health team flagged up lots of excellent resources, so I'd urge you to revisit those as well. We could use mindfulness exercises or simple relaxation techniques to help students to centre themselves. And we must understand that the teaching of these skills is ongoing. Don't rely on crisis moments for teaching these skills. Think about the green, amber, red strategies that the mental health team spoke about last week. We can provide clear expectations and support for social interaction. So neurodivergent students often struggle with social cues. This can lead to emotional frustration. Clear expectations for behaviour and communication can reduce anxiety and confusion in social situations. How can we support this? We can clearly explain classroom expectations and use visuals where this will help understanding. We can use social stories, comic strip conversations, or role playing to help students understand social scenarios and help them to practice responses. We can offer visual prompts or cues to guide social interactions, And we can create opportunities for structured social interactions, either in small groups or on a one-to-one, where students can practice communication skills in a less overwhelming environment, for example, using Lego therapy. The next thing we can do is we can adapt task expectations to support individual needs. So some of our neurodivergent students may struggle with the rigidity of tasks or the pressure to perform in certain ways. Offering flexibility can help reduce frustration and support with better engagement with tasks. We can do this by breaking tasks down into manageable steps. We can allow students to approach each part without feeling overwhelmed. We can offer choice within tasks. We can allow students to take breaks as needed to help prevent overwhelm. And we can adjust timelines and expectations for tasks to reduce anxiety related to any kind of deadline or performance pressure. And last but not least, we can use positive reinforcement and strengths-based approaches. So neurodivergent students may face more challenges than their peers, so it's important to focus on their strengths and offer positive reinforcement for self-regulation successes. We can offer praise and reinforcement for using self-regulation strategies successfully. We could use strengths-based approaches to highlight students' unique talents or interests. This in turn can boost self-esteem and reduce frustration. And we could create a system for rewarding small successes in self-regulation, such as sticker charts, verbal recognition, or extra time for a favourite activity. So we're going to move on to the PDA profile. So here's a short video describing what pathological demand avoidance, or PDA, is by people who actually experience it.
This video is a really quick introduction to PDA.
Autism is dimensional.
This means that it varies a lot from one person to another.
A PDA profile describes one way in which autism can present.
With PDA, it demands of all types,
including lots of things that you might not think of as a demand.
Can trigger an automatic threat or anxiety response.
And a feeling of panic can rapidly set in.
Demand avoidance in PDA is a question of can't, not won't.
PDAs often describe it as a neurological tug-of-war between brain, heart and body.
Also, the approaches that help can seem a bit unconventional.
A partnership based on trust, flexibility, collaboration, careful use of language and balancing of demands works best.
Because PDA is often misunderstood or misdiagnosed.
It's important for all of us to have PDA on our radar.
To find out more, please see our website.
And I would strongly advise that you do, because it's a fabulous wealth of information. So pathological demand avoidance, or PDA, involves the avoidance of everyday demands and the use of social strategies as part of this avoidance. You may also hear it be called demand avoidance or extreme demand avoidance. It was first described by Professor Elizabeth Newson in the 1980s as a pervasive developmental disorder, so it's not new. It isn't clinically recognised, which means you cannot receive a standalone diagnosis of PDA. You may hear of someone having a PDA or demand avoidant profile or exhibiting demand avoidant traits and behaviours, which, despite not being diagnosable, we can definitely support within our classrooms. As you can see from the slide, there are a variety of external and internal demands that we're faced with every single day. I often start my PDA training by asking staff to think of all the things that they have to do before they've even stepped foot into school in the morning. Often they'll describe this like a long to-do list, but even your alarm going off and having to get out of your bed are demands. It's worth bearing this in mind when we think about emotionally based school and attendance and how this may correlate with somebody with a PDA profile. So PDA is not the same as oppositional defiance disorder, but can seem to share some similar traits. The table shows the differences between them. With PDA, the behaviours are anxiety-driven, and the person exhibiting these will have autism. This high anxiety leads to a need for control, so PDA could stand for panic-driven actions. It's important to remember that the child can't comply because of extreme anxiety levels. It's not a case that they won't comply. So here's some examples of demand avoidance that you might see in school or in the classroom. I've broken them down into different types of behaviours that you might see. So avoidance is the most obvious one. Control techniques can be doubly effective for a PDA, as not only is this an attempt to reduce stress, while you're arguing, you're distracted from the initial demand. Social strategies can be effective and can often not look like an avoidance tactic. PDAs may not see authority or hierarchies and may even see themselves as the authority as they seek control. Engagement is an interesting one, as this will often feel like you've had a breakthrough, but may actually lead to increased resistance later down the line, as the fear will be that you'll expect the same again and again, hence inconsistency. A PDA may use fantasy as a coping mechanism to remove themselves from a situation where they feel pressured. The PDA profile can sometimes be mistaken for not being autistic because the traits can look like something else. For example, people with PDA might appear sociable, which almost seems at odds with the stereotypical version of autism, but they may struggle with deeper connections, and these in turn can be misinterpreted. Intense resistance to requests can be seen as defiance or bad behaviour, not autism related. Sudden changes in mood can be mistaken for mood disorders. Pretend play can often be seen as creativity rather than a coping mechanism. Obsessive or fixated behaviour can often be confused with OCD. And these traits can make PDA harder to identify as part of the autism spectrum. So what if these strategies don't work? If the previous behaviours are unsuccessful for alleviating demands, panic begins to set in as the options run out. This is an instinctive flight, fight, freeze response. Meltdowns or shutdowns in PDA are panic attacks. Understanding this hierarchy of avoidance approaches is key when thinking about effective ways to help. Conventional approaches in support, parenting, or teaching are often ineffective, and often good autism practice strategies will not always work for a PDA child either. This diagram is taken from the PDA Society website, and like I said before, I would highly recommend you have a look at their articles and resources to support any of your PDA children. There's a wealth of information on there. They use the acronym PANDA as a handy reminder for PDA approaches. So P is for pick your battles, A for anxiety management, N for negotiation and collaboration, D for disguise and manage demands, and A, adapt things where possible and be flexible. So here's a little case study to get you thinking about how we might adapt our approaches for a PDA child. What strategies could we put in place to support Ella? You can put your answers in the chat if you like, or just use this as a thinking opportunity. So Ella is 8 years old. She is bright and imaginative, and she also has a diagnosis of autism. She enjoys drawing and storytelling, but struggles with schoolwork and routine demands. Her teacher reports frequent meltdowns and refusal to complete tasks, despite Ella showing understanding of the material. Ella often distracts her peers by telling jokes or pretending to be a teacher to avoid tasks. When asked to follow instructions, she becomes tearful, shouts, or leaves the classroom. And Ella insists on choosing group activities or deciding how lessons should be conducted. So have a think about what strategies we could put in place to support her. And I'm afraid I can't see the chat, so I'm gonna move on, so sorry for spoilers. So Ella has already tried distraction in the form of jokes. She's used role play at being a teacher, and she's showing a lot of need for control. She's choosing activities and deciding how lessons should be conducted, which may mean her anxiety is at an all-time high. She's at the top of the hierarchy of avoidance. So some things you might want to try include offering Ella options about how tasks are completed. This could include using her interests of drawing and storytelling to engage and motivate her. We could use indirect or declarative language where possible. We can make requests invitational to reduce pressure. Allow the option to say no, but have a plan B in place. We can explain the reason behind demands with logical reasoning. So give her the understanding of why it is that you're asking. And finally, we can use words such as us, we, let, together to reduce anxiety and to alleviate that pressure. The key with PDA is to be ready to change, adapt, and be flexible in what you expect. And remember, it's can't, not won't. And that's the end of your whistle stop tour.